Hi, it's Paul from poorbranding.com. I'd like to welcome you to the first ever video on poorbranding.com. Very grateful to have spent some time with a close friend of mine, Tony, from tonysummers.com, and I had an interview with Tony very recently. Tony's an expert counsellor. He's one of the top counsellors in the UK. He helps with self-esteem, bereavement, and all sorts of issues that people have. He used to be a firefighter in the UK, and now he's a full-time lecturer. He also obviously does his counselling, and he runs seminars as well. Tony's an expert on fear. He runs seminars for individuals, corporates, and also martial arts clubs on fear as well. So I asked Tony lots of questions that I hope will be beneficial to you, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Thanks for watching. I thought maybe for people who don't know who you are, haven't heard of you yet, I just thought it'd be nice for you just to tell us a little bit about your background, where you came from, and a little bit your work history, because I think that's quite relevant.
Okay. My background is, well, I started off working class family, left school, got an apprenticeship, which was the expectations of me, got an apprenticeship as a pipe fitter welder. Did that for a few years. At the same time I had martial arts going on. I ended up working in lots of different factories, got really bored, hated it. Got to the point where I really hated it and didn't like getting up and going to work, and I decided one day after I heard somebody say for the, I don't know, it sounded like the 1000th time, that if they had their time again they would do things differently. And I just thought, well, no you wouldn't. I just thought, I don't want to end up sitting in a factory at 60, 65 saying to some young lad, if I had my time again I'd do things differently. So I decided that I was going to do things differently from there. I decided to join the fire service, which took 2 years for me to get in. I was really proud of the fact that I did that. I had to go back to school basically, go back on basic maths courses and get myself probably as physically fit as I'd ever been. Did that for 17 years, and then got to the point where I got a little bit bored with that, which I never thought I'd say, and then decided to leave that, which was a really hard decision, because that became my identity really, or a big part of my identity, being a firefighter. So to leave that was quite difficult. I actually took a sabbatical, intending that to be for a year, and I extended it in the end to 2.5 years, until in the end I knew that I had to make the final decision and leave, which I did. Now I teach a lot of conflict resolution to people in the NHS, fire services. There's a lot of personal development involved in that. I'm also qualified as a counsellor. I've worked in lots of areas, from bereavement, working with families of people that have committed suicide, depression, all sorts of areas, phobias, goal setting, a lot of motivational stuff in there as well. I've done martial arts, all the way through this I was doing martial arts. I've done martial arts to a very high level. I'm a 5th Dan with the British Combat Association. And that's where I am at the moment really. I'm travelling all around. I was in Ireland the weekend teaching, Scotland in a few weeks, so I'm travelling up and down the country teaching people. But even with my martial arts now, I'm bringing a lot of the motivational stuff in, because I think that's what people need, that's what people want to hear. People want to hear that they have got choices, and they have got options. There are other areas open to them if they're prepared to step forward and make that choice.
Okay. So how did you become a counsellor? I mean, what was the process? Was it something that was offered to you, or is it something you'd always fancied doing?
No, it's something, to be honest with you, it's something that I'd never heard of. I've never even really considered. Well, I had heard of counselling, but it's a path that I've never considered going down. I was always interested in helping people, and I always felt that I had an older head on my shoulders. Even as a kid, people used to come to me for advice. I was the eldest of 4 brothers, and they used to help my brother, even though we used to fight like cat and dog most of the time. They'd still come to me when they wanted some advice. How I got into the counselling was in the fire service. One day they had this new scheme called fire setter tutoring, And the government had done some research apparently on people that had been in prison for a long time, and they found that a lot of them started, these long-term prisons, that a lot of them started with petty crimes like lighting fires and shoplifting and things like that. So they decided that it would be a good idea, especially with the young kids that were lighting fires, if they could get a fireman to go and talk to them and maybe nudge them off the path they were on onto a better path. And when I heard of the scheme, I thought I really liked that. And they asked for volunteers, so I volunteered to do it. And they sent me on a basic 2-day counselling course, which was really basic counselling skills, but I absolutely loved it. It was quite funny at the time, because after the 2-day course they told us that we were now trained counsellors, and they sent us out, typical of the fire service, they sent us out to these families to work with these kids, and lots of times I found myself just completely out of my depth. A lot of times it was the parents that needed help and not the kids. So I decided to take the counselling further then in my own time. And I did a year course at a local college, which got me a certificate, what they call a certificate level, and then I carried that on and did a 2-year diploma. And after that I went on I've looked at lots of different counselling, lots of different therapies, transactional analysis, I've done NLP to master practitioner level. I like to look at all solution-focused therapy. I like to look at lots of different therapies and take the best from each one. So that's how I came into it. I've been working at Coventry University for the last couple of years working with the students on all sorts of issues there. It's like a world within a world. But it absolutely fascinates me. I'm really passionate about it now. But it wasn't a road I considered. It's almost like I stumbled down that road. I'm glad I did.
In the fire service, I would imagine, is a fairly macho occupation with a lot of bravado, and people would tend to laugh off even death, I guess. So it would seem a strange environment for somebody to step into counselling.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is. But I think underneath that facade, this macho image, most people have got issues, and most people have got obviously things that they would like to deal with.
Yeah.
And most people are not going to admit that, especially in a macho environment like that. But I actually found in a group situation, if I was sitting around with all the rest of my, the firemen and all the rest of my watch, we used to call them, that nobody, you're right, everyone would have, if you mentioned anything like this, they would take the mick, it'd all turn into a bit of fun. But one by one, people would come and sit with me. And I used to like to go and sit on my own. I was always studying, always reading, and I'd be sitting in a study room, and one by one almost people would come in and sit with me and tell me their problems.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the done thing to be seen, to talk about it in front of lots of people, but on an individual basis, I think people did admire the fact that I was doing that, and actually used it as well.
Do you find that when they came to talk to you, they came to on the pretext of something else, like they were going to talk about football or training, and then
definitely
they dropped it in?
Yeah, it would always start with what I would call small talk or safe talk, like you said, football or what was going on in the job.
Yeah.
I get a lot of it in martial arts as well. People come to me for self-defence lessons.
Yeah.
And that's the pretext. But there's other things going on.
Right.
I've had people come to me that have been sexually abused, but they don't come in and say, I've been sexually abused. They come in and say, can I learn some martial arts? And then they start talking about that stuff afterwards.
So a lot of people, like you said, you'd heard of counselling but you didn't know about it. What is it, and how does it work? Is it, because you said there's different varieties.
Well, counselling is basically, the analogy that I like about it is, one of my favourite analogies is that it's like if you break a bone and you have a cast put around that. If you break your ankle, for example, and you have a cast put on your ankle, the cast is not actually going to heal the bone. The bone will heal itself, or it will be set by a doctor to heal itself. The cast is there to support you while the bone heals. And that's how I'd look at counselling. It's there for when you have times in your life that you need a bit of support and a bit of help, and to look at where your issues are coming from, and to get you through those times in your life that you're really struggling.
Yeah.
People use it for different reasons. People use it for personal development. They might not have a problem in their life, but they just want to look at why they do things and where some of their fears or their beliefs come from.